Welcome to our presentation on the Air Force Civilian Service. We're focused on performance evaluation practices. We're Group 5, Christopher Nugent, Clinton Verner, and I'm James Orlando. The Air Force Civilian Service is the civilian support for the Air Force. It consists of over 600 separate occupations, including technicians, researchers, and base support staff, such as teachers, IT personnel, and cooks. It shares its mission with the United States Air Force. It has a dedication to the same mission as those in uniform, and the mission of the Air Force is to fly, fight, and win in air, space, and cyberspace. As far as a literature review of performance evaluation best practices, performance evaluations are a critical part of ensuring an organization keeps and maintains staff that help achieve its mission. Performance evaluations should be ongoing, they should have clear metrics, and be designed to promote good behavior and deter bad behavior. They should not come as a surprise to employees, and as such, employees are to be part of the evaluation process to the fullest extent possible. Evaluations are worthless if they're not done objectively, and the goals of evaluations must be clearly defined by organizations and must align with an organization's mission. As far as a performance evaluation outline, the Air Force Civilian Service takes its performance management from the Department of Defense standards. They seek to enable a culture of high performance. High performance cultures empower the employees to engage with the mission of the organization and has employees who are empowered to develop skills. It requires accountability of good and bad behavior on part of employees. They also seek to create a culture of engagement. It requires employees to be engaged with the performance review process and address opportunities for growth and development of employees early and often. The performance appraisal cycle runs from April 1st through March 31st of the following year, and the rating of record will be effective the 1st of June. A minimum of 3 documented performance discussions, performance planning, performance review, and final performance appraisal is required, with emphasis on continuous two-way communication. A 3-level rating pattern, outstanding, fully successful, and unacceptable, is used. Clearly developed performance elements are linked to organizational goals, and these objectives are descriptive performance narratives reflecting distinctions in performance. Documented performance, hopefully, is then going to be linked together and used for personnel decisions. Continuous recognition and reward, both monetary and non-monetary. Focus on fostering a culture of high performance. And the tool being used is an automated performance appraisal tool called My Performance to facilitate performance planning, communications, and the appraisal cycle process according to the DoD. The evaluation consists of employee feedback and self-evaluation. This ensures that any good behavior won't be overlooked. The narrative of the year's work, any documentation of disciplinary or lax work or good behavior, and high-achieving work. Formal evaluations are based on a 1 to 5 scale, but that's over 3 levels, so 1 being unacceptable, 3 being fully successful, and 5 being outstanding. A final discussion of the performance, and the goal, according to the DoD, is to have no surprises. For the evaluation using the Flaherty material, this analysis will consist of comparing the research practices of performance management and appraisal program of the AFCS with the best practices laid out by section author Louis Bender. Evaluation cycle. Flaherty stresses that evaluations are a year-long process and not just an event occurring annually. The DoD appears to agree, citing performance management focuses on a continuous year-long process of communication, development, and results, rather than waiting until the end of a performance period. So Charlie Rehberg's 17th Training Wing Plans and Programs states that for his employees, he tries to give them either daily or weekly feedback on performance and continued expectations. And Flaherty agrees with this, stating several times throughout the chapter that the need to document and provide communication is key. Establishing performance criteria, the DoD recently established a new management and appraisal program The enormity of this undertaking is vast, with 718,000 civilians, but one of the peak goals was establishing performance criteria. This performance criteria has to be based off of objectives that are linked to organizational goals and written using SMART criteria. They will then be graded off of a 3-level rating pattern. Conducting an evaluation interview. Procedure for evaluation interviews starts with a year-long effort, including frequent performance reviews. Ongoing communication and feedback are essential to a successful performance management program, according to the DoD. A written rating of record must be given to each employee in the final performance appraisal discussion that occurs at the end of the performance period. Supervisors are required to rate each performance element based on an approved plan and provide a rating of record for each employee who has been under an approved performance plan for at least 90 calendar days during the appraisal cycle. So the final performance appraisal discussion should be a culmination of the continuous feedback that occurred throughout the performance period, according to the DoD. Of interest is that the final performance appraisal must be reviewed by HR prior to communicating to the employee. Disagreements of rating of record should be attempted to be resolved informally by employee and supervisor. Otherwise, the employee must raise the concerns through the administrative grievance system. Maintaining employee records. The DoD does not specifically mention retention of records, but emphasizes that records be kept by both the employee and the supervisor for the ongoing progress discussions and reviews. Evaluation and compensation. The DoD encourages recognition and rewards for high-achieving employees, recognizing or establishing a DoD recognition and rewards program, emphasizing achievable recognition and reward. And being recognized and rewarded should be achievable for all employees, according to the DoD, not just those at the very top or those doing the most visible contributions. Legal considerations. The DoD appears to have structured their performance management and appraisal program in such a way as to protect the employee, the supervisor, and the organization from legal malfeasance. The performance eval instrument is developed in a systematic manner. Job descriptions used are kept up to date and are reviewed and communicated regularly. Performance evaluations are then performed fair, job-specific criteria, and are reviewed by HR. Some common performance evaluation errors that we spotted in reviewing these, we found that there is a small range of the rating scale. There are only these 3 choices, this 3-level rating system, outstanding being 5, fully successful 3, and unacceptable 1. The size seems to lend itself to the central tendency effect, which happens to when a supervisor rates everyone at the midpoint or at a given point on a scale, according to Flaherty. What this can cause is little to no separation between candidates for rewards that may be limited based on financial resource availability. The recency factor seems to be taken care of by the frequency of supervisor-employee progress discussions and reviews. However, it must be noted that if a high level of communication does not occur, this can lend itself to the recency factor. Halo or horn effect seems to be compensated for by the dual role of the supervisor and the employee in crafting the job description, as well as personal bias. So it seems to be compensated by the fact that both the supervisor and the employee are very involved in crafting the job description, setting these performance goals, and the final review of that evaluation is then done by human resources. Couple this with the given forms of redress and addressing performance issues provided by the DoD, and the possibility for personal bias seems quite limited by the structure of this program. The introduction of DP MAP is part of a wider program being brought on by the Department of Defense called New Beginnings. The goal of the new program is linked to the 2010 National Defense Authorization requirement to provide a fair, credible, and transparent way to link employee bonuses to performance appraisals. DP MAP went into effect April 1st, 2017, but the first time it was used for an annual evaluation was in April 2018. In order to prepare the workforce for the change, web-based training was offered in addition to and in an in-residence class or a combination of the two. A presentation published by the DoD Defense Civilian Personnel Advisory Service shows a number of training objectives and steps in the 6 months leading up to the implementation of the new program, and then continuing 1 year after to evaluate learning impact and overall effectiveness. DP MAP is built around the idea of focusing on fostering cultural, attitudinal changes in performance management. DP MAP seeks to develop a DoD-wide standard rating cycle of April 1st through March 31st and uses a 3-level rating pattern that is based off objectives linked to organizational goals. The objectives that are created by supervisor and employee are supposed to be narrative assessments that show distinctions in performance. In effect, they pertain to an element of the employee's job descriptions while linking to an organizational goal. The vehicle used to put DP MAP into practice for Air Force civilians is called My Performance. Almost the entire performance appraisal process is conducted electronically, largely focused on establishing the objectives and narrative to go along with those objectives. The process begins with onboarding and your first meeting with your supervisor where your job description and expectations are reviewed. In the federal system, your job description can be reliant on standardized description that relates to the job series. For example, Public Affairs Specialist is coded 1035 by the Office of Personnel Management. In other cases, the supervisor writes the job description at the beginning of the hiring process and is able to tailor the job to that particular office's needs and wants. DP MAP then requires the employee to take that job description and potentially elements that are not included in the job description, like additional duties, and incorporate them into multiple objectives that are in accordance to SMART guidelines and link to organizational objectives. These objectives are plugged into a program called My Performance. This is where much of the interaction between employee and supervisor takes place. The employee will enter their objectives in narrative form with the applicable SMART element for each objective. Once that is complete, it will then be sent to the supervisor to review. If there is something that needs to be modified, then the supervisor electronically transfers ownership back to the employee to make any necessary changes. The system mandates that whoever owns the appraisal is the only one that can edit it at that time. For supervisors that have daily in-person contact with their employees, the issues experienced by the clunkiness of this system can be mitigated. But it would seem for people like Charlie Reberg's 17th Training Wing Plans and Programs, who performs evaluations on 12 civilian employees, it can cause challenges with appraisals being stuck under the supervisor or employee's ownership. Mr. Reberg believes that in its current form, the way that DP MAP is implemented in the Air Force and in the 17th Training Wing is ineffective. He believes that the biggest reason behind this is that the evaluation process isn't linked to anything, even though one of the stated goals by the DoD was to do just that. Mr. Reberg says that in its current form, in practice, it is not being used for bonuses, hiring, step increases, or anything. He believes that right now most people do not take performance evaluations seriously. Mr. Reberg suggests that the goal of the performance appraisal system should be to reward outstanding performance and use the evaluation and feedback process to help average or below average employees to improve their performance. The goals with which DP MAP was created and launched are sound, and it seeks to address the right things when it comes to performance appraisal. 2 years into its implementation and only 2 evaluations in, it's understandable that a workforce as large as the Air Force and the DoD at a larger level is still getting to grips with how it will work and how to implement what it does. At this point, it seems that employees and supervisors are still finding their way, the formal process and the data created is only really being used on a small lower level. Eventually, this will hopefully evolve into what it was intended to be on a larger scale. The goal is that performance evaluations become a way to establish a fair, credible, and transparent way to link employee bonuses to performance appraisals. Regardless of the system, supervisors like Mr. Reberg show that as long as the system evolves, the knowledge base is there to be able to apply it correctly. These are our references. Thank you.